are back. Season 2 of Club 904, syndicated on the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 network, begins now. And boy, oh boy, are we starting with a bang. The bang that we're starting with is not technical difficulties on my part in pressing the wrong video, but that's how you know we've been away for 3 weeks here on Action Sports Jacks and Club 904. What's going on, everybody? Excited to be with you for the next hour. I am your host, Mia O'Brien. We have another jam-packed preseason ahead. We actually weren't with you in the preseason last year in the 2025 campaign, covering all things Jaguars each and every Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. here on Action Sports Jacks. But we are excited to kick things off. And like I said, we're doing it big. We're bringing in the big guns. This time I will press the right video, folks, as I do introduce my wonderful 3, yes, count them, 3 guests from Jaguars land. It is the one and only John Shipley of Sports Illustrated. I've got you in the camera now, John. We're ready to rock and roll. He's muted, so we'll unmute him here at some point in time. Dan Griffis, Gus Logue. We're going to promote the heck out of John and Gus's upcoming projects, but I am excited that all of you made time to have a wide-ranging conversation about Duval's favorite football team for the next hour. Appreciate you guys all hopping in, boys. Ship, thanks for also rolling with the punches. I know I had Gus tracking you down to make sure you were ready to go for the 2 o'clock start. And thank you for dealing with my attempt at an AI slop-created graphic earlier today.
Yeah, no, we're here ready to roll.
And better yet, we may or may not have a surprise for you and Gus that Dan Griffis already has gotten a little glimpse into. Dan Griffis, of course, from Action News Jacks, our data bank. He's going to provide us with some numbers and some intel in terms of projecting where the Jaguars hope to be in 2026. Of course, you get John over on Sports Illustrated each and every day, as locked in a reporter on the beat as there is. And then Gus Logue, the do-it-all. You get him at Duval 22, the Prowler podcast, which without further ado, Gus and Ship, if you would like to introduce that exciting upcoming project, we're going to promote it throughout the course of this program because it's kind of a crossover pod. But Gus, I want to make sure that we pay homage to this new exciting endeavor for you and Ship.
Absolutely. Me and Ship have been podding on and off again for the past few years, but we've definitely logged our hours. We're excited to try to do it on a more consistent basis going forward, really starting with training camp next week. But it's basically a lot of the podcast, just like me rambling off terrible takes, John correcting them. But there's ebbs and flows to it, but in a good way. And so hopefully everyone checks that out over at the Prowler podcast.
And you, of course, can get that on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to hopefully hear some of those terrible takes here today. A little preview.
There it is.
Here's the format. Here's the format for everybody who's hanging out with us, which appreciate you guys doing so. Again, we are live 2 to 3 p.m. here Tuesday, July 21st. You, of course, get this program on demand wherever you get your podcasts as well. We are 8 days out from Jaguars training camp officially beginning, boys. Our opening segment is just going to be entitled Burning Questions. Each of us has one. We will discuss said question. In segment number 2, we're going to take a look at where the Jaguars currently rank in the landscape of the AFC and beyond. And then finally, we're going to have a little pre-training camp award show that I know that the folks at home, as well as you 3, are going to have some fun with. So let's start with Mr. Shipley. Mr. Shipley. I was about to call on Dan Griffis, and I could tell he was like, oh, no, don't call on me, just like that kid in class. Mr. Shipley, let's start with you. What is your biggest burning question heading into Jaguars training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just simply has to be, who replaces Devin Lloyd? There were only 2 real departures this offseason. We know who's replacing Travis Etienne. It's going to be, some combination of Chris Rodriguez and Bashal Tuden. And I feel like most people think that we know who's going to replace Devin Lloyd at linebacker or Ventrell Miller. But, Branson Combs was a big riser over the offseason program. I think that it'd be foolish to, count him out of the competition before training camp even starts. And not a lot of people had Ventrell pushing Devin for the job last year, but he did that all the way through week 1. And the staff has shown that, they'll let the best guy play regardless of really what that kind of looks like. So I think that's a big battle to watch just because, Devin played, I think, 75% of their snaps last year. That's a lot of snaps to fill from a year ago.
I do wonder, and again, we're going to look more big picture, Anthony Campanelli's scheme evolving, into year 2, coming up in segment number 2. But Dan, you and I have spent a lot of time on this program discussing replacing Devin Lloyd in the aggregate. And so perhaps, especially given the final snap of the Jaguars season against the Buffalo Bills on defense, Devin Lloyd was not on the football field. There was one off-ball linebacker on the field in Foye Oluokun. Perhaps part of replacing Devin Lloyd is maybe subtracting the value of that second off-ball linebacker?
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to replace Devin Lloyd if you only have one linebacker on the field, because you can run a lot with just Foye Oluokun. And that is kind of the current trend. The Jaguars have really sought after the nickel dime guys, whether it's Caleb Ransaw or Jalen Husky to go in there and fill that role. Also, you have 2 terrific nickel defenders in Jarian Jones and Jordan Lewis. It would be awesome to get them on the field at the same time, as hard as that is. With you'd have just 4 starting corners. But yeah, depending on matchups who they're going against, it's especially on passing downs, the Jaguars probably, Ventrell Miller does great in run defense, but when you get to those passing down scenarios, you can do a lot with those dime packages that the Jaguars really started off the year last year running a lot of dime, and then it kind of faded out a little bit. But I'd imagine with the upcoming onslaught of tight end packages and doing various things there in the NFL trending towards nickel and dime packages, that'd be the Jaguars can do a lot there, and they've really put in a lot of effort to getting guys that can fill those roles.
Dan makes a great point, Gus. In terms of those heavier personnel packages on offense, how do you counter it? Can you counter it with more nickel and dime because you have an Antonio Johnson, a Caleb Ransaw, or does that necessitate a bit of a throwback in a Ventrell Miller, even though I would argue he has more sideline-to-sideline speed than your traditional thumper linebacker, with all due respect to friend of the program and John Shipley's fellow Clay County, Orange Park native, Shaq Quarterman.
Yeah, the Seahawks made it really look easy on their way to the Super Bowl last year, in large part because of their rookie defensive back, Nick Emanwori, who Mike McDonald said himself was basically like a third linebacker out in the field. And so Emanwori allowed the Seahawks to stay in these light personnel packages, even though he's a pretty heavy body for safety, and still be able to defend the run and do a lot of things in the defensive structures that are typically out of base with more heavy bodies on the field. And so, yeah, people are going to want like the next Nick Emanwori, the next Kyle Hamilton, maybe Antonio Johnson is one of those guys who's able to fill a couple of roles, not just in terms of like post safety responsibilities, in the box responsibilities, slot corner responsibilities, but just like in terms of run versus a pass, being able to fit run gaps and stuff like that. And so certainly like this versatility across these bigger / lighter bodies, which results in kind of more tweener athletic types, is like kind of the evolution point right now in the NFL.
We appreciate everyone who's hanging out with us live, and this is an interactive program, so let's get to some of our listener questions, and Ship will give you the final word on this first burning question of the program. This is from our friend Hef, who says, it is Ventrell Miller in base. I think they go more dime with AJ as the dime backer next to Foye, and Mike adds, I'm still excited to see where Jalen McLeod figures into this situation. Of course, I would think McLeod is more of a pass rusher, designated pass rusher, but maybe you have a different opinion on the situation, on your perspective on the former 6th-round pick, Ship. Oh, we got to unmute you. Gene.
No, I think there's definitely a competition at the backup, strong side linebacker spot. I mean, Dennis Gardeck last year was really important for them in that role. It's not, I'd say, a giant role in the defense, but depending on what offense they're playing week in, week out, at least gives them the ability to be flexible and have their defense kind of look like a true, throwback 4-3. And Gardeck, it's kind of surprisingly played all 17 games last year, despite coming off some serious injuries. So we didn't really see what it would look like in that role if they were ever missing him. You see Abdullah, I think, only had a handful of snaps on defense all year. So I expect Abdullah and McLeod to kind of duke it out for that spot. And I don't think the winner will necessarily get that many snaps, but at least keeps them around, with the program moving forward. I mean, McLeod is somebody who has legit pass rush traits, and I think that could be the difference maker.
And also special teams value, of course, will be critical for whoever does indeed make the 53-man roster in that position battle. Dan Griffis, let's go to you for burning question number 2 heading into Jaguars training camp. What direction are you taking us in?
Yeah, so Shipley kind of mentioned it a little bit. The Jaguars' run game. They weren't able to really do all that much of the offensive line position. They actually did more than I thought they would, adding Emmanuel Pregnon, who fell into their laps, God willing. And so you have the potential there to bring him into a starting role. But it's kind of like the Jaguars 5 are kind of set as it stands right now. Maybe he can fight for the right guard spot. I know like national media likes to say the Ezra Cleveland spot, but I think Ezra Cleveland's probably the Jaguars' best offensive lineman, or at least the most consistent over the last couple of years. But yeah, the Jaguars' run game really tanked. And it's a great thing that the Jaguars passing attack picked up when it did, because over the last 8-9 weeks, the Jaguars run game really suffered. For reference, over the last 5 weeks, Trevor Lawrence had one less rushing first down than all Jaguars rushing running backs combined. Is 17 for the Jaguars running backs and 16 for Trevor Lawrence over the last 5 weeks. Something I'll mention. Travis Etienne gained 0 or negative yards on 21% of his carries last season. And Bashal Tutin and Chris Rodriguez are both in the 13-14% range. So that's something, canceling out those negative plays. Liam Cohen and the Sean McVay tree loves the success rate stat for running backs. And I think that's going to be something that the Jaguars are really going to look at, is trying to mitigate those negative plays from the running back perspective.
Gus, when it comes to the run game, or let's kick it over to you, is it the mystery at the running back position that intrigues you the most heading into training camp? Because it's a great question, of course, from Dan. Or is it where the offensive line factors into the evolution of Liam Cohen's run game?
Yeah, certainly there will be an evolution up front, even with like us kind of expecting to know who the starters are going to be, as Dan kind of mentioned. So to me, the question is really in the backfield and just like who emerges. We saw like Parker Washington and plenty of the players emerge in the second half of last season for Jacksonville. And Liam Cohen said himself, like, one of the stinks of last season, quote unquote, was the run game. They were just never able to get it going. It was one of the few bad things that was happening at the end of a really great season when a lot of good things were clicking at the end. And so how they're able to get that to click obviously is impacted a lot by coaching, is impacted a lot by the unit up front, but we can't forget about the running back position altogether. And so whether it's Bashal Tutin, whether it's Brian Robinson, Chris Rodriguez, maybe even LaQuint Allen, like we all kind of have this like capped perception of, I think, of him, like where we all like know he's a dog and we appreciate his competitiveness on the field. But we're like, he's a third down running back and like is probably going to not see the majority of snaps even with injuries. But maybe we're wrong about that. If either of these 3 guys can like really take a step forward and kind of claim the backfield, or at least just be a featured part of the offense and take a step moving forward, that would be big time.
People forget LaQuint Allen, one of 2 running backs coming out of college in 2025, 1,000 yards on the ground, 500 yards through the air. I don't want to call him Mr. CTE, John Shipley, but you know who I'm referring to. Is Cam Scadaboo of the New York Giants being the other. Ship, we've received some more listener questions who have questions about the right side of the Jaguars offensive line. You heard Dan allude to Ezra Cleveland, arguably one of the best offensive linemen the Jaguars had last year. So maybe his spot is not as up for grabs as many would like for Emmanuel Pregnon's sake to believe. But that right side of the offensive line also saw Anton Harrison have a career year last year, even if the PFF metrics show that perhaps it was running off the right side where the Jaguars running back struggled. Maybe that's more of a Travis Etienne, though, conversation than it is the line itself.
Yeah, I do think the run game is, if you're looking at, okay, where can Anton Harrison improve to kind of launch himself from everybody in Jacksonville thinks he's pretty good too. Okay, nationally recognized as one of the better young offensive tackles in football. I think it's probably the run game. You saw flashes of it, I think, last year and in past years in general. Last year, he obviously had a lot of like highlight plays when like blocking on the perimeter, and those were all nice and good. But I think just the consistency is what, like in the run game specifically, is kind of the last piece of the puzzle. Like they know he can pass protect. He's one of the few offensive tackles in the NFL who's posted good career numbers against Will Anderson. I mean, he faces him twice a year, and Will Anderson routinely has some of his worst games as a pass rusher against the Jaguars. Anton Harrison isn't the complete reason, but he's a fairly big one. But I think if he can take a step as a run blocker, that is where he can really, ascend as an offensive tackle talent.
And that's where you wonder, Ship. I mean, as of this writing, again, it's July 21st. Training camp has yet to open. Who is that right guard in your estimation next to Anton Harrison, who maybe aids him improving as a run blocker?
Yeah, I think as you're entering training camp, Patrick McCarry will be the guy, I think, throughout the first probably week or weeks of training camp. I am interested to see if Wyatt Milam pushes him at right guard. I think Ezra Cleveland, he's in the last year of his contract. I think they probably just, kind of do what they did with a couple guys last year, let him play out his last year as a starter and then let him hit free agency while they go with a younger option, probably Emmanuel Pregnon next year. He's kind of a more natural left guard than anything else. I think Milam, having the experience that he got last year and also now being healthy really for the first time since last year's training camp, I think he has the talent to push McCarry at the right spot. So I think it's a toss-up between those two. It wouldn't surprise me to see Milam start week 1, though.
Gus, let's flip it on over to you. You get the next burning question heading into training camp next week for the Big Cats.
Yeah, originally I was going to talk about base versus sub-package personnel, but we kind of already hit that with Shipley's question about Devin Lloyd, how they're going to replace him in the aggregate. We kind of know what the Jaguars' starting roster looks like, I think, in terms of base. For offense, it's 3 receivers, Parker Washington, Brian Thomas, and Jacoby Myers. And then for defense, it's going to be nickel with Jordan Lewis in the slot. The cornerback and safety starters. Devin Lloyd is slotted in as one of 2 linebacker starters across from Foye Oluokun. I mean, obviously, training camp position battles happen in training camp, obviously. And so we could see some movement. But I'm really interested to see when those base packages are not on the field and you get on a jumbo lineman even, or obviously an extra tight end. Is Nate Borkshire going to be able to immediately seize that role? How often does Liam Cohen want to utilize 2 running back packages on defense? Is the strong side linebacker, like we talked about, just Dennis Gardeck's job, or can Abdullah or McLeod kind of eat into that a little bit and earn their way onto snaps onto the field? And so whether those guys can make their way onto the field. But really, again, I feel like we're going to talk about this later in segment 2. So my real burning question is just going to be what are the Jaguars good at? What can they lean on? And so I'm sorry to throw you for a loop, Mia. But I think it's a lot of what the Jaguars 2026 season projections are just that, projections. They have so many young players, so many unproven players, especially on the coaching staff too. Liam Cohen's only in his 2nd year. He's got a lot of young guys under his belt. And so we're projecting a lot of development and growth and stuff moving forward for Cohen, Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas, Trayvon Walker, Travis Hunter. The list goes on, Anton Harrison. And so figuring out exactly what the team is good at and what they can lean on in times of adversity during the regular season, be able to say, oh, back in training camp, Trevor Lawrence, Parker Washington, and gotta have it situations was an easy layup for us, or Trayvon Walker lining up inside was just automatic for us, or this specific personnel package, the specific play concept, we were just nailing it in training camp. So let's go back to that, because that's what we're really good at. And I think that'll help the team find its own identity and be able to, again, lean on it in times of adversity during the season.
We definitely are going to go back to base packages versus nickel, Gus, because I have a lot of questions as far as on the offensive side of the ball. The Jaguars in 11 personnel, let me do the quick math here, 11% more than the league average last year. Obviously, with drafting Nate Borkshire in the 2nd round, logic suggests that is going to shift. But I'm curious if it actually does. We're going to get to that in segment number 2. John Shipley, was that an example of a Gus Logue hot take? His throwing me for a loop for what is burning question. He's nodding along.
That was completely mild by Gus.
It took us on a journey.
That one didn't even jolt me.
If it makes you feel better, Gus, it's something my executive producers and I are working on with me at ESPN Radio. Not just giving every explanation in the world and then actually asking the question. So it's something we're all improving on. That's why we're all friends and we're all hanging out here in Club 904.
That's right. I'm just trying to give you my all, Mia.
Yes, we're just trying to get better and we're improving and we're just hanging out having a conversation. It's what I told Dan Griffis when he hopped into the club before we went live. And so, Dan, let's kick it over to you. What are the Jaguars good at as of 8 days ahead of training camp beginning, in your opinion?
I think you have to look at the secondary ability to make plays on the ball. They had 107 passes defensed last year. Franchise record, also led the NFL. 22 interceptions and 31 turnovers in general. And a lot of guys who came into the year and really exceeded expectations. We all kind of thought that we knew coming from Dallas that Jordan Lewis was one of the best nickel defenders in the NFL. But there was some doubt regarding Jarian Jones with the swap to outside, and then he comes back and replaces Jordan Lewis inside last year and performs admirably. Also, the growth of Monteric Brown and the highlights that you saw from Travis Hunter before he went down to injury at the corner spot. You really got to feel good there. And also the depth at the position now that the Jaguars have 4 really good corners. You got some more guys on the back end that can do some safety corner stuff, whether it's Antonio Johnson or Caleb Ransaw. We don't know what we have from him yet, but obviously exciting player who the Jaguars really seemed to like last year. So I'll look at the secondary and as well the wide receiver position where they're just so loaded and have a bunch of guys who can do a lot of different things.
I would like for the record to show it took till the 22-minute mark for the name Travis Hunter to be said on this program. So just file that one.
You're
away.
welcome, everybody.
We're giving you a 91 player in-depth look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're not just playing the hits like many of the outside Jacksonville news and media stations that I know I've corresponded with. I'm sure you have as well, Shipley, Gus, because I feel like every question I get, Ship, is about Travis Hunter, when in reality, when we talk about what the Jaguars are good at, Travis Hunter may be actually one of the biggest unknowns as opposed to a known commodity.
Oh no, I'd say he's definitely one of the biggest unknowns, and it's not even questioning, I think, his talent. It's more so, one, the big question is, of course, when will he actually be back? I know, of course, it was reported that he'd be a full go for training camp. I believe that he'll be healthy at the start of training camp, whether or not he's taking 100% of the team reps and stuff like that from the first day of training camp. I'd say probably pump the brakes and let's wait and see. I mean, I think once he does return, though, the question is, what will his split look like between offense and defense? But I think all signs are, pointing to, him taking a much bigger role at cornerback this year. And for the value of a receiver and for all the exciting traits he has as a receiver, the book on him for most evaluators coming out of college was that what he would excel at the most is probably a cornerback. Like he could easily be an elite NFL cornerback in pretty quick fashion. And I think that's probably what the end result will be for the Jaguars and Travis Hunter this year. Plus, I mean, sprinkle in potentially a couple of touchdowns on the offensive side, and that's a pretty valuable player to have on your roster.
Briefly, Ship, before we hit our first time out, what do you believe the Jaguars are good at as of July 21st?
Oh, man, I think they're really good at self-scouting. I think that one thing that you saw the Jaguars do a lot last year was they were out pretty quickly on a couple of guys. I mean, they signed De'Ami Brown to a $10 million contract, and it wasn't even the bye week when he was phased out of the offense pretty much completely. And it wasn't just him. There were several guys who either they had made commitments to, the previous regime made commitments to, who they showed that they were pretty clearly okay with moving on from if they weren't, the best players for a spot. And it went to even past investments going with younger guys over veterans that the veterans weren't getting the job done, which not a lot of coaching staffs would have played BJ Green and Danny Strigg out more down the stretch last year. So I'd say that's probably what the Jaguars are best at, is just their ability to kind of evaluate their own talent and make judgments from there.
The screen game, going away from the screen, it wasn't working. They went away from it, and I think that behooved them later on in the season, and I think it made the offense a lot more. They just weren't good at it, like awful bad stats wise. They were 32nd in completion percentage, and that's something that shouldn't even be like a talking point when you're talking about screens.
It makes me feel very good to hear both of you say this, because when I went on with a radio station in Cleveland last week and they were asking about James Gladstone and the administration, and I just said, look, like, they're not only accessible, but they also are vulnerable enough to admit when they make a mistake. And that's where, to your point, I think self-scout is a lot prettier of a word, Ship, when it comes to admitting a mistake and then trying to correct it on their own. Thank you, Shu, among those hanging out with us. It is indeed quite a crew in Club 904 today. And when we come back, we are going to dive into Gus Logue's other burning question, which is my burning question: personnel packages, formation tendencies, and where the Jaguars stand in the landscape of the AFC South. Let's take a quick timeout. When we return, we will address that and a whole lot more here on Club 904.
People helping people. It's at the core of what Alive Credit Union is all about, and it's been that way for over 70 years. From the start in 1954 to today, the mission remains to inspire financial wellness and give you a financially fit lifestyle. Alive Credit Union and its employees are committed to not only serving their valued members, but also our community here in Northeast Florida. I had a chance to see that commitment firsthand as Alive partnered with our Action Sports Jacks 24/7 team to bring you Armada men's and women's soccer broadcasts. Inside the 18, it is a shot, and it's a goal! Chloe Chivers! And that connection to the community continues with Alive Credit Union's support of the Police Athletic League of Jacksonville. Alive Credit Union's commitment to our community also involves serving the financial needs of all first responders through the recent merger partnership with City and Police Federal Credit Union. Join the community and become a member of Alive Credit Union today. Find out the many ways you can be inspired in financial wellness at alivecu.coop.
Most of us know how to throw. But you need to know what to throw. I'm not talking about footballs, baseballs, softballs. We're talking about those items you need to recycle. Republic Services explains it easy. Recycling simplified. 1. Know what to throw. When in doubt, throw it out. 2. Empty, clean, and dry those materials. It takes an extra minute, but it makes a big difference. And 3. Don't bag it. This makes the recycling process faster and more efficient. This is a look at the Republic Services North Florida Recycling Center. You can make this process even more efficient. By utilizing those 3 steps, Republic Services can help you become a better recycler in your home. Learn more at recyclingsimplified.com.
If you look good, you feel good. And the medical professionals here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics are here to make you feel your best. I'm on camera every week, and I have a confession to make. I'm not always confident in my appearance. Can you see my dark circles? Is my makeup highlighting my fine lines instead of covering them up? I question it all. So when I found out about the wide variety of procedures here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics, I knew help was just one appointment away. Medical Director Dr. Megan Deacon Casey and her board-certified physicians have been using the latest in cutting-edge technology for the last 10 years, giving men and women their personal confidence boost. From Botox, fillers, Morpheus 8, and so much more. The hardest part was figuring out what I needed. Thankfully, the medical team walked me through what would work best for me through a free consultation. Come look and feel your best with the team here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics. Visit them at one of their 2 locations, either over in Ponte Vedra or on the south side.
Welcome back to today's episode of Club 904, our season preview, our season premiere in season 2 here on Action Sports Jacks. I am joined by John Shipley of Sports Illustrated, Gus Logue of the Prowler podcast, and I officially say that, or Duval 22. What am I identifying you as, Gus?
Prowler Podcast and Big Cat Country.
Love it. Prowler Podcast and Big Cat Country it is, as well as Dan Griffis, hours of Action Sports and Action News Jacks acclaim. Let's dive into what Gus already noted, our burning question from yours truly, but also more of a looking at the landscape of the NFL as it currently stands. Gus, you can lead us off, given you wanted to dive into it. Base package versus nickel. We'll start on the defensive side of the ball. For me, where I wanted to hit on this topic in segment 1, but glad to do it so in segment 2, is the idea of Anthony Campanelli not just being great at self-scouting, as Shipley alluded to, but great at taking a second and saying, you know what, if my best players on the defensive side of the ball happen to play defensive back, I'm going to find a way to get as many defensive backs onto the football field as physically possible. And being adaptable and saying, I don't care what position you play, we will find a way to get the best 11 onto the field. And that's where I'm very fascinated to see this platonic love child between Vic Fangio and Brian Flores, 2 of his former bosses, find that happy medium in terms of running a zone defensive scheme, but also still wanting to be physically to attack at the point of Be physical at the point of attack. Words are hard today. This is how you know it's our season preview. Physical at the point of attack, in your face, and maybe even, Gus Logue, generate a pass rush, possibly?
Yeah, well, it all starts with the run and the run defense. I think what's impressive about the Jaguars last year is that they were able to start experimenting with more nickel and dime sub-package personnel and still be able to be number one in the league in run defense. And a lot of that is a credit to their players up front, Foye Oluokun in the linebacker core, and then Devon Hamilton, Trayvon Walker, and Josh Hines-Allen. Similar to the Seahawks, like it's not all Nick Emmanwori. Like also they have a pretty devastating front, just like a great depth chart of pass rushers. And so it kind of like solving problems in this area helps fix problems in this area type of deal. And so for the Jaguars, it's just about staying disciplined in their run defense and like making sure that that's the main thing, stopping the run first while still being able to toy a little bit more with these other packages, other coverage shells, and just be more diverse in general. And that's really the name of the game, is becoming more diverse, getting guys like Nick Emmanwori, who's able to fill multiple roles, getting guys like Trayvon Walker, who can rush the passer off the edge, but then also fill in more on the interior because he's great at that too, if need be. And then you're filling out the rest of the roster that really like allows Trayvon Walker to play in his best spot and allows Antonio Johnson to play in his best spot and allow Brenton Strange to play in his best spot. And so certainly like we can talk a lot about like the different personnel packages, like 11 versus 12 versus 13 versus 21 on offense, and then nickel and dime and base and whatever the case may be on defense. But it's really just about the players specifically and how much flexibility they allow to their defense coordinators.
And to your point, I think the Jaguars have a lot of adaptable, flexible players, especially on that defensive side of the ball, Gus. And it's so funny to hear Nick Emmanwori, Trayvon Walker in the same sentence, because I do agree, like they are both flexible and adaptable. But if you put those two guys next to each other in a lineup and said, yes, these are our X factors, and you were trying to clump them into the same department, I'm not sure that on the surface level, a casual football fan would be able to identify the Swiss Army knives that both of those players are. Dan, let's head to the data bank here briefly. Last year, the Jaguars ran zone 76.6% of the time. They were in nickel 56% of the time in their defensive coverage. I will also throw at you a blitz rate number from our friends at Sumer Sports, as well as our friends at Match Quarters, because I do think these are some interesting numbers when you consider the personnel we already heaped praise onto. The Jaguars were their blitz rate, was at 30% last year, which was about the league average, but they were fifth in blitz rate when rushing 6 or more. And so you tell me, Dan, are we going to see more of the same in 2026 in terms of the coverage and in terms of the blitz rate, or were both of those numbers that I just laid out there byproducts of, outside of Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, there wasn't much in the edge rush department?
I guess it depends if the answer to that question changes. We obviously the return of the downfall of the Jaguars' interior pressure after Eric Armstead got injured was night and day. The Jaguars basically collapsed interior pressure wise when he went down. Outside of like moving Trayvon Walker inside. But he's not a defensive tackle, so you're moving your edge inside to basically force or orchestrate interior pressure. But you mentioned the Jaguars blitzing. The Jaguars linebackers were second in pressures in the NFL last year, 62. For reference, Jaguars defensive tackles had 76. So the Jaguars defensive backs had 30, which was fifth in the NFL. So they love to blitz seemingly anybody and everybody, in order to create pressure. And it worked because the Jaguars led the NFL in EPA per drop back when the quarterback was pressured. And whether, that comes to be with, next season, if they can get more pressures with a 4-man rush and without blitzing, that opens up so much more for you, and you can be more creative in disguising blitzes and but even going back to the play Kansas City on the goal line, the Devin Lloyd. Kansas City was expecting an all-out blitz basically from the Jaguars and play, cover zero. And then you have Devon Hamilton and Devin Lloyd drop back into coverage. And, if the Jaguars can be more disguised with their blitzes or disguise non-blitzes, it opens up so much more for them. So hopefully next year they will not need 92 pressures from their linebackers and defensive backs. They can do a lot more with their front four.
Oh, John Shipley, I know you're hearing these numbers, and I've been on this beat since 2018. You've been on it since 2019. I'm going to be short, sweet, to the point. Are we going to not have to talk about the Jaguars pass rush in 2026?
No, I think just where the Jaguars are. I mean, they've made it clear what their entire model is with the pass rush. I mean, they have two guys they're paying over $100 million, and they're going to look to fill out the room with cheaper options. And they've pretty much gone as cheap as you can outside of them, between, two undrafted free agents, a 4th rounder, a 7th rounder, and a couple undrafted free agents. I think if you're the Jaguars, the one thing you're banking on for the pass rush to be better this year is Trayvon Walker being healthy. I mean, it was a small sample size before he first got injured last year. He got hurt in week 4 against the 49ers. But in those first 3 weeks, he had 2 sacks, I believe 6 quarterback hits. I mean, you average that out, that's about an 11-sack season over a 17-game sample. I mean, he was playing relatively well before he got injured. And then even after he got injured, he clearly wasn't the same guy for much of the season. He still made some impact plays, throughout the season. So I think as long as Trayvon can stay healthy, I think he kind of holds the key, because you know what you're going to get out of Josh Hines-Allen, and it's just, can you capitalize off the matchups he helped create? Last year they couldn't, because the guy that would normally do that was clearly not 100%. So I think this year, the entire argument of is the pass rush good enough really depends on what Trayvon Walker does.
The straw that stirs the drink.
I actually have a stat on Trayvon Walker's injury. His Next Gen Stats tracks get off. His get off dropped by 1/10 of a second from his career and the first 3 games, and then the rest of last season. So that's for that statistic a pretty sizable drop off, because it's you're talking like a 13-14% dip.
And that's,
and I mean, it wasn't even just the wrist injury that he had against,
the knee.
49ers. Yeah, he had a knee, later on in the season. I think he had that against the Chargers. So that wasn't even that deep into the second half of the season. It was definitely a rough year, for him from a health standpoint. I think when you see him healthy, he's very clearly a different guy. And as you said, data kind of supports that.
And yet you could probably argue he still was one of the most valuable players last year, to bring it back to Gus's point, because he is the straw that stirs the drink, and he does so many different things for you, and is that key that actually can unlock what this defense can be. Let's go quickly around the horn. In the landscape of the AFC South, just give me a sentence or two. Gus, then Dan, then Ship. Where does the Jaguars defense, in your estimation, rank in terms of the South and in terms of the AFC at large, Gus?
Obviously Texans have the first number 1 defense in the AFC South. I think that's pretty obvious in the AFC at large. And then, I mean, I'm always been a big fan of Big Lou over in Indianapolis since his days with the Bengals. So, I mean, I think the two of them are right there together, because the Colts also have a little bit of issues with their pass rush, where it's like good, but is it good enough? They're counting on some young players to take a step forward, just kind of like the way that the Jaguars are expecting big things from Trayvon Walker moving forward. And so I'd almost lump the two of them in the same category behind the Texans in the AFC South, at least. And so I think they're definitely above average, definitely above the middle of the pack in terms of all AFC defenses. But like, you've got the Texans, you also have the Broncos. You've got some pretty good units that I think a lot of people would probably place ahead of the Jaguars, especially considering the lack of splashy investments made this offseason to their entire defense, especially when you consider Devin Lloyd's departure. But then the defensive line in particular, because I feel like a lot of 3rd and 11 situations last year, like when you imagine how the defense got off the field, it was like Campanile lining up everyone on the line of scrimmage and dropping out in some funky coverage, as opposed to like the 4-man rush consistently getting home. And so since that's still a question mark for the Jaguars, I wouldn't necessarily have them in a top tier of AFC or even NFL defenses.
For timing's sake, Dan, Ship, thumbs up, thumbs down. Jaguars are above average in the AFC on defense. That's a thumbs up from both of them. All right. Above average. Well said, Gus Logue. Ship, let's start with you on the offensive side of the ball. We've got about 5 minutes before we take one more quick timeout because then we have to get to the award show. I'm very excited for our pre-training camp award show, if you couldn't tell. On the offensive side of the ball, the Jaguars lined up in 11 personnel 65% of the time last year. The league average was about 56%. That was 8th among all 32 teams in the league. They lined up in 12 personnel 18.5% of the time, which was 4% less than the league average. That was 21st. They were 20th in 13 personnel, 2.8% of the time. The Los Angeles Rams, because all roads lead back to the LA Rams, John Shipley, ran 13 personnel 30.5% of the time. However, they were 30th in 12 personnel packages, just 9% of the time. And so I bring all these numbers up to say, with Nate Borkercher being drafted, I believe Tanner Koziel is probably a healthy scratch the first few weeks, unless he balls out in training camp, just because they did pay Quentin Morris to be their tight end 2, tight end 3. But nonetheless, committing to Borkercher, committing to Morris, Koziel, does that instantly say the Jaguars are going to run heavy personnel packages 20+% of the time?
I don't think so. I think it says they probably run 12 personnel a bit more than they did last year. Because Liam Cohen has said before that, he's a big fan of 12 personnel. I think when you just look at the construction of them and the Los Angeles Rams, for example, the Rams can, especially when Puka got hurt, go 13 personnel, and you're not really asking, okay, who are we keeping off the field, for receivers. The Jaguars, just the way their roster is constructed, you have too many receivers to be playing like any excessive amount of 13 personnel would simply be them being too cute. It's just not how the roster is built. I agree. I don't see Tanner Koziel having a very big role early on, but I do believe they'll play more 12 because I think they'll trust Nate Borkercher more in the line of scrimmage than they trusted Johnny Mont or Hunter Long a year ago. And I do think a lot of what Nate Borkercher will do is kind of playing that, doing the dirty work role, because then that will allow you to, line up in 12 personnel, but now we can split Brenton Strange out wide because we trust the protection that we have at the tight end spot against the defensive end, so on and so forth. I think that's where it makes an impact, but I don't expect the Jaguars to start, completely abandoning 11 personnel by any means. I still think it's going to be their, main drink of choice.
And not to mention Dan Griffis, I think that the heavier personnel packages open up more opportunities in the run game. And that is really where I think, statistically speaking, you will see a change year over year for Liam Cohen's offense in terms of how much they run the football.
Yeah, they were also something else to note is they were 7th in 6-0 line packages. So I think that you probably see that transition as well to more 12-13 personnel and using that to open up some in the run game. It seemingly didn't work. I'd have to look at the statistics, but it seemingly didn't work all that well. Although a part of that is admittedly due to some untimely penalties whenever they were in 6-0 line packages.
Chuma Edoga to the gulag, yes, unfortunately. But Liam Cohen, Gus said he doesn't want to live in a world where he has to deploy a 6th offensive lineman. That's part of why they drafted the tight end. We're going to talk a lot about heavy personnel packages, I think, for the next 6-8 weeks, just because that is what is in vogue allegedly across the league. But you tell me, Gus, what's your biggest takeaway looking back at 2025, looking ahead to 2026 on the offensive side of the ball for the Big Cats?
Yeah, I would just reiterate Shipley's point about Cohen liking 12 personnel and to expect a lot of 2 tight end personnel packages on the field for the Jaguars this season, maybe more than last year, but not necessarily a ton of 13 personnel or even 6 offensive linemen, because I think both of those would be done out of necessity more so than because they want to. And so obviously one of the biggest question marks from an individual standpoint during training camp will be Nate Borkercher. I almost don't even care if he's looks like a goofball as a receiver, but if he could seems like he can hold his own as a rookie and be able to offer up more opportunities in the passing game for Brenton Strange and the running game for the backs, then that'll be a huge just week 1 kind of storyline or advantage to start the season, is being able to trot out those 2 tight end looks immediately to start the season for Liam Cohen.
Just like Anthony Campanelli wants to have multiple defensive fronts. He wants to be multiple. The same can be said about Liam Cohen. And the offensive side of the ball, they want to keep you guessing. All right, thumbs up, thumbs down. The Jaguars above average on the offensive side of the ball against the rest of the AFC South, amidst the rest of the AFC South. I got a thumbs up. I got a thumbs up. How about
against Brian Dable? Yeah, I'll thumbs up that.
There's a Gus hot take for y'all. How about against the rest of the AFC? All right, so we're going to do a hand raise for this because then we got to get to our award show here in a second. The Jaguars offense will rank in the top 10 in the AFC, not the NFL, but in the AFC, the top 10 in the AFC. I know that's amongst 13 teams. So really,
You putting the hand up? What's going on, Ship?
Yes, there's a hand up. There's a hand up.
Oh, I forgot we were changing it.
How about this? How about this, Ship, then, for everybody? The Jaguars offense will be top 5 in the AFC. No, I'm getting a no from Dan Griffis.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah.
I'll put my hand up too.
Okay.
They've got a good quarterback.
How many good offenses are in the AFC?
One more note on Trevor, because since you brought up the quarterback, Gus, he was, according to Sumer Sports, 17th in the league in total EPA against zone. He was 7th in man. Do we improve that number, Gus Logue, in 2026? Do we see Trevor Lawrence improve that number?
Steadily but surely. What's the phrase? I don't know. Definitely.
Slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely.
It's very
Steadily.
clear. It's very clear we all need to catch our breath because we're all so excited for the preseason training camp award show. I know Ship especially. I don't know. Did you take a look at the awards we're giving out here?
I did.
I was very excited for some of the names that I came up with because I had John Shipley in mind. Let's take a time out. When we come back in a minute and a half, we will have your pre-training camp award show here on Club 904.
A pit, it ain't legit. When you hear that, you think Bono's Pit Barbecue, a staple in Northeast Florida now for 75 years. A place that feels like home with friendly service, a meeting place for friends, family, or business occasions. On the menu, the corn nuggets are a favorite in our house, but there's something for everyone. Sandwiches, platters, salads, sides, desserts, and family feasts. You see Bono's all over the place in Northeast Florida. You know, there are almost 20 locations in the Jacksonville area now, so stop on by, sit down, and dine in with Bono's. You can also take it to go. There are drive-thrus in many of the locations, and they have delivery options too. Just download the Bono's app to make things easy. I signed up for the loyalty program, and you can too, to get special offers. If Jacksonville is home, few things feel more Jacksonville than Bono's Pit Barbecue. Celebrate 75 years and many more to come. Bono's Pit Barbecue. If you don't see a pit, it ain't legit.
Choose your own adventure. It's not just a saying, but a way of life here at Cycles of Jacksonville. And whether it's 2 wheels or 4 wheels, at Cycles of Jacksonville, a great adventure awaits. With brands like Honda, Vespa, Segway, and Triumph, Cycles of Jacksonville has you covered with their inventory featuring a 60,000 square foot building. If 4 wheels is more your thing, check out the largest selection of Honda Talons in the entire county. No matter what you're looking for, Cycles of Jacksonville is going to have the selection you need, all with great financing and rebates. Plus, if you're active duty military, Cycles of Jacksonville will offer you 0% financing along with great discounts for military and first responders. And when you want to get off the road and set sail, Cycles of Jacksonville has you covered with everything you need to get on the water. So if you're ready for a great adventure, let Cycles of Jacksonville be your guide. Located off Atlantic Boulevard, or check out their website at cyclesofjacksonville.com.
Welcome back into Club 904. Before we bring the boys back, just want to remind you guys, like this episode, subscribe to Action Sports Jacks, and of course, keep it locked right here. Club 904 each and every Tuesday, 2 to 3 p.m. You also can sign up for the O'Brien NFL Notebook. Jaguars training camp is coming. All of my written reports are behind the paywall, but it's only $5 a month, plus a free 7-day trial ongoing. All right, let's get back to today's episode. Here are our wonderful panelists on this lovely pre-training camp roundtable. And it is time, gentlemen. Dan Griffis has already had a chance to look at this. SI's John Shipley, Big Cat Country's Gus Logue have not. The time has come. I may have had some AI slop of a graphic earlier, John Shipley, but I hope my Canva animation, it makes everyone proud because I am very excited for this first ever pre-training camp awards on Club 904. Let's get to award number 1. Training Camp Darling. This is given to the random player who won't make a team, but will be every fan's favorite player for the next 6 weeks. John Shipley, who is your nominee for Training Camp Darling in 2026?
I'll go Jamari Taylor, just because I don't think I see a scenario where 4 running backs make the roster, but also at the same time, there is no way LaQuint Allen, maybe LaQuint does, but there's no way Bayshot Tune or Chris Rodriguez get a single touch in the preseason. So I'd imagine you're going to see a lot of Jabari Taylor one way or another. And I mean, he was pretty explosive and exciting in the offseason program, had pretty good tape. I was pretty surprised he wasn't drafted. I think he's going to be a pretty popular name in about a month or so.
Dan Griffis, how about you? Who's your training camp darling award winner?
It was Jamari Taylor.
Here we go.
14 touchdowns led the ACC, 55 missed tackles. Especially for a guy like Shipley said, who's going to get a lot of work in the preseason. He's going to be a fan favorite, and I think he's going to make some tears shed when the time comes.
Gus, are we going to go 3 for 3? Are we going to have a unanimous award winner?
No, but I am going to go with another rookie, CJ Williams. I think he's going to carry over a pretty strong OTA minicamp performance. I'm name cheating a little bit because I do expect him to make the roster, but it could be a scenario where like he's getting a lot of fan love during the preseason, during training camp, and then all of a sudden he's not a starter and doesn't really see the field at all during the regular season. But we saw that a lot from Parker Washington the past 2 off seasons before he finally emerged as a legit guy on the field during the regular season last year. And so I think CJ Williams will perform in a way that makes people excited about him in the future.
Let me call an audible because I think CJ Williams might also be a nominee for this next award, which is the Their Guy Award. This goes to the player who will somehow make the 53-man roster via both special teams and a sheer work ethic that Liam Cohen and his staff just cannot quit. Gus, CJ Williams perhaps for that award, or who do you have as your nominee?
I'll go with another rookie to keep the trend going, Zach Durfee out of Washington, just because I think that his athleticism and hopefully work ethic will really appeal to the Jaguars coaches and maybe make them say, all right, this guy can at least give us 100% effort on special teams to start the season. Maybe we can continue working with him and get him on sub-package plays on defense to really get after the pass rusher, because he is kind of a different flavor of pass rusher that the Jaguars currently have on the roster. But if he can get on the roster via special teams immediately, I see that as a path for him.
Shipley, I believe you just wrote about Zach Durfee over at SI.com. Tell us more. Is he one of your nominees for this honor, for Their Guy?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely up there. I think he's another guy who, you really saw BJ Green and Danny Strigow flash really first in the preseason last year, and then James Gladstone, Liam Cohen talk about how many issues they gave their own offense tackles in practice. I could easily see Durfee being that guy. I mean, just for the sake of mixing it up, I'll go Jabbar Muhammad. I mean, I thought he was excellent over the course of the offseason program. He had some spectacular production in college, just in terms of pass breakups and ball production. It carried over to the offseason program. He looks a lot like Christian Braswell in the sense that he can play in the slot, he can play outside. He's somebody who I think is definitely, a name to continue watching after the offseason he had.
Dan Griffis, for context, and I think Shipley and Gus would echo this sentiment. I would say that the Their Guy Award winner last year, certainly Danny Strigow and BJ Green, who made the opening day 53-man roster. I would also throw Branson Combs out there, who of course ultimately had to get snuck off the practice squad onto the 53 because another team was trying to claim him. So for context's sake, now that I've laid that out there, who is your winner for Their Guy, our way too early pre-training camp awards?
Parker Hughes just screams like
interesting
intangibles. He's
special teams, baby.
586 special team snaps, team captain, really, really low career missed tackle rate. He put up 25 reps on the bench, which I think would have led the combine linebackers 4.39 40-yard dash. I don't know how much defensive play he's going to get, but if he can work himself onto a spot, just simply by playing special teams, he's a fun one.
We've got Jabbar Muhammad, Parker Hughes, and Zach Durfee, our award winners for Their Guy, who will somehow find a way onto the 53-man roster. Our next one, we sure about this? The guy that we will be questioning. By the way, the 2024 winner of this award, John Shipley, let's start with you, was Brian Thomas Jr. So it's not to say that if we are questioning you in training camp, your career is over. But with that said, who is your winner here on July the 21st?
Yeah, I think if I had to go with one, it'd probably be Patrick McCarry at right guard. I think, they didn't spend a ton in free agency last year in terms of any big major deal. They spent a lot, but they spread it out around their entire free agent class. But he was their biggest free agent fish a year ago. And you can make the argument maybe he is better as kind of your quasi Cole Van Lannon from a year ago, where he's not slotted into one specific spot and he can play all over. But they paid him enough money. You would think that he'd be at the point where there's really no question that he's the guy entering 2026. Whereas now, I know he dealt with a lot of injuries last year. I don't think anybody can say that, what we've seen from him in a small sample size in Jacksonville has so far been enough to say that he should just run away with the job.
Gus, how about you? Who is the Are We Sure award winner in your book?
Yeah, I went with Ventrell Miller, basically kind of like for narrative reasons. He's got a lot of expectations on his plate, just filling in that role for in the starting job for Pro Bowl linebacker Devin Lloyd. And so I think that he's eventually going to have a pretty good season, especially since like we saw it from Lloyd last year, like the way that Campanile was able to put him in positions to succeed, kind of turn off the thinking for him a little bit and let him just go play. And that would definitely be a good thing for Ventrell Miller, who feels like a missile shot out of a rocket sometimes, the way that he accelerates. And so I'm looking forward to seeing his progress and development throughout the course of this year, but I just wouldn't necessarily be surprised if it seemed to kick off to a relatively rocky start and have us all being like, maybe the Jaguars should have invested a little bit more here at this position.
Great call, Gus, because people forget Dan Griffis. There was an or next to Devin Lloyd's name with Ventrell Miller's name following that 1 year ago. Where do you go for your Are We Sure award?
I hate to piggyback off of Ship again, but mine was Patrick McCarry. He had really high expectations given the salary, and now with the Jaguars having some really good options behind him at the guard spot, whether it is Emmanuel Pregnon or Wyatt Milam, Patrick McCarry can't make the same mistakes that he did last year, and especially he wasn't good enough at guard to kind of make up for the penalties. He led the Jaguars with 10 total flags. He was second in the NFL in offensive holdings. So this just not it's probably not going to be good enough to survive the entire 2025 offseason if you're making those same mistakes with his level of play from last season.
Because we are pressed against for time, we are going to end with the award that I am most excited for, and I believe many of you are as well. That is the Cooper Tugboat Hodges Honorary Spirit Award. What player will pump up the crowd the most at training camp, and we will all be rooting for, even if it doesn't actually work out on the field? Let's begin with you, Gus Logue.
I'm going to go with a weird one, Travis Hunter. I think everyone's obviously going to be rooting for him as someone who the team traded away multiple first-round picks for. Super high expectations for that reason, kind of similar to what we saw from Trevor Lawrence and Trayvon Walker, I think, back-to-back first overall picks. Even if they're doing really well, everyone wants them to be great. And so I'm hoping that he's able to make at least some great plays, rile up the crowd, and start to rise to those expectations.
Dan, how about you?
We mentioned him earlier. I'll go Zach Durfee just because it's the eternal search for an edge three for the Jaguars, a true edge three. He like Gus said, he's a little bit of a different pass rusher for the Jags, but 9.78 RAS. He led the Big Ten in pass rush win rate. There's hopefully a lot of excitement there to see how he plays in training camp.
You think Matt Damon went on an odyssey, John Shipley? How about us here in Duval trying to find that third edge rusher? Bring us home. Who wins, in your estimation, the Cooper Hodges Spirit Award in 2026 training camp?
He won't fit most of the qualifications for the award, but the difference in the crowd noise you hear from fan practices when Brian Thomas Jr. catches a deep ball compared to pretty much anything else, I think nobody gets the fan base probably more excited about what the offense can do than what BTJ did over the offseason. So I'll go ahead.
BTJ it is. Our friend Golf Season Timmy says talking football is back. What a thrill and a delight. And Doctor also hanging out with us. Go Jags. Can't wait for the new season. It's been a fun time. It's been a long time coming. We appreciate these three gentlemen taking an hour to discuss the upcoming training camps slate with us and a whole lot more. And we appreciate all of you hanging out with us in Club 904 Nation. We are back. Make sure you like this episode. Subscribe to Action Sports Jacks on your way out the door. And, of course, Shipley, Gus, Dan, thank you guys for joining us. I will see you guys